Pi is 3.14159265, but you came here for Pocket Ronnie, so please stay tuned.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about quadrilaterals. The word lateral means sides. Quad means four. So we will be talking about figures that have four sides. All quadrilaterals have four sides, and all quadrilaterals, the angles inside the quadrilaterals add up to 360 degrees. This is true for every quadrilateral. So here are the different kinds of quadrilaterals that we're going to talk about. The first, you have a rectangle. To describe a rectangle has two pairs of parallel, that's a symbol for parallel, two pairs of parallel sides. This side and this side are parallel, this side and this side are parallel. So that's one pair, this is one pair. Also, a rectangle has four right angles. Every one of these is a right angle. And this also proves that the degrees will add up to 360. 90, 90, 90, 90. 90 times 4 is 360. So this is how you can describe a rectangle. Two pairs of parallel sides and four right angles. Okay? That's a quadrilateral. Under a rectangle, under the category of rectangle, you have a square. A square is a special rectangle. Okay, so a square is a rectangle, it's just a special rectangle. So the way that we can describe a square is that all sides are congruent in a square. Remember, that's a symbol for congruent. If I mark it like this, that means all these sides are congruent. And it has four right angles. Every one of these is a right angle. Okay, so other quadrilaterals, you have a parallelogram. The way I like to describe a parallelogram is a tilted rectangle. Take a rectangle, push one of its tops over, and you basically have tilted it. A tilted rectangle. That's really not the best parallelogram for me to draw. But the way you can describe a parallelogram in words is it still has two pairs of parallel sides. This top and bottom are parallel, that's one pair. And then these sides are parallel, that's another pair. There are no right angles. Okay, so there are no right angles in a parallelogram. If I added up all of these angles, they would still add up to 360. Okay, the one thing about parallelograms, this angle and this angle are congruent, and this angle and this angle. My picture is not the best, but the opposite angles in parallelograms are congruent. Since this symbol matches this symbol, that shows congruent. This symbol matches this one, that's congruent. Okay. A special parallelogram is a rhombus. A rhombus is just a tilted square. If I took my square and tilted it over, it's a rhombus. A rhombus is a parallelogram, which is a special parallelogram. In a rhombus, all sides are congruent, just like a square. So a rhombus, all sides are congruent. And there are no right angles. Okay, there are no right angles in a rhombus. Again, the opposite angles are congruent in a rhombus. And if you added all these angles up, they would add up to 360. Every quadrilateral, the angles add up to 360. Alright, one more quadrilateral you have that does not fit under a rectangle or is not a parallelogram is a trapezoid. Trapezoids look like this. That's a trapezoid. You could also have a trapezoid that has a right angle. Looks like that. In a trapezoid, you have one pair of parallel sides. You can see that this top and the bottom are parallel. This top and bottom are parallel. There's only one pair of parallel sides. These sides are not parallel. This side and this side are not parallel. In a trapezoid, you can have one right angle. You might not have any right angles. But again, all of these angles are going to add up to 360. And these angles may not be congruent, so I'm not going to mark any angles congruent. So the best way to describe a trapezoid is one pair of parallel sides. So, alright, so now that we've talked about the different kinds of quadrilaterals, then let's look at 8D. D as in dog. And we're going to look at 1 through 6. So if you look at number 1, a square has 4 congruent sides and 4, what kind of angles? So a square, they are all going to be right angles. Number 2, all 4-sided polygons, all of these are called polygons. Polygon, gon means angles, poly means many. So this just means many angles. All these quadrilaterals are called polygons, which just means that they have many angles. They have more than one angle. And a 4-sided polygon just means it's a 4-sided figure. So all 4-sided figures are included under the term quadrilateral. Any 4-sided figure is called a quadrilateral. And all these figures have 4 angles. I'm skipping number 3 because you should be able to answer number 3 after doing number 1. Look at number 4. A figure with 4 congruent sides whose angles are not, this is a key word, are not necessarily right angles. So a 4-sided figure that does not have any right angles and the 4 sides are congruent, that would fall under a rhombus. A rhombus and a square are the only 2 figures whose all their sides are congruent, but a square has right angles, a rhombus does not. Same with a rectangle and a parallelogram. Rectangle and parallelograms both have 2 pairs of parallel sides, but a rectangle has right angles and a parallelogram does not. Okay, look at number 5. A blank has only 1 pair of parallel sides. The only quadrilateral that we talked about that only has 1 pair of parallel sides, 1 set of parallel sides, is a trapezoid. Okay, number 6. Any quadrilateral with 2 pairs of parallel sides. So, any quadrilateral with 2 pairs of parallel sides. Okay? It doesn't talk about right angles, so it doesn't say it does have right angles. So, we should just put that under as a parallelogram. Because in reality, a rectangle is still considered a parallelogram. A rectangle is just a special parallelogram that has right angles. So any quadrilateral that has 2 pairs of parallel sides, and since it doesn't say it has right angles, then we need to classify it as a parallelogram. If it told us it had right angles, then we would say it's a rectangle. Okay, the other thing that you're going to do in this lesson is the perimeter of any of these figures. Perimeter means to add the distance around. Okay? The one thing Matthew C. likes to talk about, it has the word rim in it. So you want the distance around the rim. The one thing that I like to think about is if you were a little ant and you were going to travel along these edges, you need to add up the distance, what you would travel if you were that little ant walking around this whole figure. The one thing that you have to notice, if you're going to add up the distance around this figure, you need to know the distance of every line on here. You know the distance of this line, this line. We are not given this one, so we need to determine what this distance is. We are not given this one, so we need to determine that one. We know that one, we know that one, we know that one, we know that one. Okay? So the first thing that you need to do is fill in the numbers of the ones that you are not given. Well, if this is 2.5, it shows that these are the same height. So if this is 2.5, then you know that this one is also 2.5. And we're all dealing with inches. So for this one, you know that the bottom length, the total bottom length has to add up to 10. Well, you are given that this is 2 and this is 3. That adds up to 5. So then you need to subtract that from 10 to get this distance, okay? So 10 minus the 2 minus the 3 leaves 5 left. So you know that this distance right here is 5 inches. So now all you need to do is add up all of these numbers to determine the perimeter. So if you took your 2 inches, I'm not going to write my units while I'm working it out. I will write my units at the end. 2 plus 2.5 plus 5 plus 2.5 plus 3 plus 6 plus 10 plus 6. That's basically taking my numbers. I started here and I walked all the way around this figure, adding up my numbers. That total comes out to 37. Units are always important. Perimeter is a distance, so it's just a unit, not square unit or a cubic unit. It is just inches, feet, yards, meters, centimeters. So it's very important. You can either use a symbol for inches, or you can abbreviate inches, or you can write out the word inches.